All right, here we are. Let me turn down the music because I don't want to have that noise going on. So, welcome, Alexander. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
I am doing all good, Tara, and I can hear you just fine. It is another glorious day up in Scotland where I am looking forward to deconstructing and dissecting Trotskyism with you. In the ma-
Well, I go ahead. I'm sorry.
in a manner that I'm sure Mr. Cutrone's intellectual influences wouldn't approve of.
Well, I have to tell you. So, welcome everyone to Morbid Symptoms. My name is Tara Van Dyke, and I'm joined again with Alexander McKay for a special Bad Trot Takes episode. I think a week ago today we had a debate with Cutrone. He came on the program, and oops, I might still have the sound on. Sorry, I think I still have
You've
some
still got
background sound
the
on. Oh
backing
my god!
music on.
One day I'll master the StreamYard. Anyway, I can hear you and you can hear me. Hopefully, people can hear us. I heard some reports back that the audio was a bit off and on the last time. But as I'm sure you know, if it sounds good to you and it sounds good to me, then there's kind of not a lot we can do about what's going on at StreamYard. But I hope that people can take this in. You're not going to want to miss this, people. Anyway, yeah, but I have a hot tip, but maybe I'll wait for it because I recently discovered that the Trotskyists have they've disavowed, apparently, well, at least, what is it, the Socialist International
World
Socialist
Socialist
Forum?
website.
Yes, World Socialist website has made a point of saying, no, that's too, we're not down with that. So, who knows? So apparently, maybe we have mistypecast him, or maybe he's the last Trotskyist.
Probably. Well, I think the more accurate description for him would be like sort of last post Trotskyist, given that. But I would say that even though he probably doesn't identify as a Trotskyite anymore, the fact that as we have learned more about his background in recent days, the fact that he was in the utterly insane Spartacist group in the United States, I'm sure we'll get into them. Wasn't no, I didn't. I must admit an error. I didn't put two and two together when he said that's where he started out. And if I had known that, then the debate would probably have gone in a less polite direction, given the stances of that group. But yes, and just to address something somebody said in the comments about Chris coming on in good faith, and this is how he responded. Chris and Doug Lane have already done their own rather disingenuous post-mortem, where Mr. Cutrone claimed victory, despite the fact that it would seem that in our discussion, he appeared to retreat from most of the positions that he'd been criticized for and made some very ludicrous comments, which I'm sure we'll get into. So to answer Mr. JD's comment, just to finish finish off, yeah, he came on in good faith. Yeah, we had a discussion. Then he ran away back to Doug's channel. Doug, who, by the way, has blocked Tara due to other reasons.
Well, that was a year ago. That was a year ago he blocked me. Yeah.
All right, but he's already had his chance to claim victory, so now we are responding, and I don't think we'd have done this if he hadn't run off and claimed victory. So here we are.
Well, yes, and on that note, he did come on. But I'll a good faith. We'll see. I think he thought he was going to Sith Jedi mind trick us. He didn't do his homework, and he got his ass handed to him, is how I understood it. But we were nice about it, because you don't want to kick a guy while he's down. Well, now I don't care. But so let me just start off. How this started off with is that, let me see if I can get this to go on the screen. Go on the screen. Why is this doing weird things now? Oh, here we go. So here, I still haven't figured out the etiquette. So like if I'm posting a clip or a show, and we've mentioned somebody, I'm always on the fence if it's the best thing to do to tag them or not to tag them, And so in the past, I don't think I have, but this last time I did with the one on his socialist unity, his neocon Polonian pastiche, if you will, Estonian pastiche. And he came back saying, you guys could always talk directly to me if you need clarification on what I actually advocate, which is completely missing here. Did you actually read my Socialist Unity article? Did you actually listen to my podcast appearances on it? Doesn't seem so. And so to that, I responded, yes. Did you? Meaning, are you familiar with what you've said and what you've written? Because Alex and I read through the stuff and sat through the stuff. And I think it's quite interesting that, as a side note, because even though I don't fuck with these guys, because first of all, they're gender borg, or they pretend to be, yeah? They're all fine with the trans women or women and the TERFs and the unicorn trans kids. And, oh, it's just culture world, totally turning a blind eye to the capitalism of it all, the gentrification of sex, and, the proletarianization of literal social reproduction, material reproduction. No. They are all fine and dandy on that. And when I get to my spilling the tea of Doug Lane, we'll circle back to that, how that comes into it. So first of all, I don't give a crap. After that, like, if you can't stand up and basically be like, yeah, there's two sexes and there's nothing you can say or do that can turn a man into a woman or a woman to man, and the trans kid, Dr. Genderstein vivisection nightmare is, oh my God, not healthcare, then middle finger to you. So that was the first point. And then when they came on and started talking like they fell out of Bibi's asshole, totally just spilling like, the beheaded babies, and there's a reason why Gaza concentration camp, and just all the crap. He's the most Zionist, non-Zionist I've ever came across in my life. So I don't fuck with these guys. I don't care what they have to say. I don't consider them credible. And that, we all have our lines. I'm sure maybe they say some fantastic things about other things, but I don't care. And there's plenty of people. I'm not missing anything from not tuning in regularly to the Chris Cutrone and Doug Lane glazing hour. So that's my point. However, it's not just about me. Yeah. So after this, I said, yes, did you actually read your stuff? And then I also had to have some fun with him because he thinks he's the smartest person in the room, which, if the only other people in the room were Doug Lane and like Ben Burgess, then maybe he is. But so I wrote, well, a letter always reaches its destination, which is a Lacan thing. We don't need to get into that. We did read Socialist Unity, Chris, and made it through 2 episodes of elaboration. Obvious bargaining. Your desire is easy to read. Your master easier still. And at this point, he emailed me and DM'd me saying, hey, I think it's time for a comradely discussion. And I was like, fine. And as you know, I sent him the thing like, we'll do 10 minutes. We'll recap our takes on your takes, and then you can have 10 minutes to respond, and then we'll have a back and forth. Yeah. But it was not about Stalinism. I mean, yeah, I did frame it as that meta frame, Trotsky versus Stalin, but it was always about his stuff. Yeah. And I was so nice to him. I was so good faith to him that I thought, it would be hard because he is a person, it would be difficult to sit through what are 8 hours of critiquing Cutronism. So I thought, okay, I said, I'll, by the 2 days before the debate, I'll send you a summary of our points. Yeah. And I sent it to you. You okayed it. I sent him. He had all that. And he didn't choose to clarify. So if as he originally said, if we were so off the mark, he could have taken that opportunity to educate us about how we've gotten him so wrong. But that's not what he did. He wanted to turn around on us. Oh, Stalinists and Hangman of the Revolution, and what was it, like the fascist, like the right-wing Marxism, slippery slope to fascists. Like, oh, I don't know why I'm here. What I'm supposed to defend? Oh, it's like, get off the cross, Chris. You reached out to me. You wanted to come on my show, and I took the time to summarize all our points, and you thought, no, I'm smarter than them. I'm going to try to make it about Stalinism, and then we'll stop there, because why didn't you take the bait on that? Why did you decide, like, I'm just going to pretend he didn't go all into that and decide just to keep it on track with his point that Marxism isn't anti-imperialism and that it's bad politics and bad Marxism to, have any kind of solidarity with the Palestinian resistance that's headed by Hamas and other groups like it?
Well, because if we'd have got into that, I could have basically just come back as soon as he started saying that, oh, Stalin is the hangman of the revolution, etc. That, which, by the way, is an old Trotskyite line from the 30s. If we got into that, then what would have happened is the whole thing would have been a discussion of history of the Russian Revolution, or I should say the Soviet Revolution, in the 1930s. Who said what, who wrote what, and who got killed, basically. Which is interesting in its own way, and I think would have been important to discuss. But given that he wanted to come on and clarify his position, then if it had turned into me then basically outlining a defense of like the Soviet leadership's industrialization policies between 1929 and 1939, then we wouldn't have actually learned anything about what Chris himself says he believes in.
Or the lack thereof. Material.
Or the lack thereof. But perhaps that's what he was after. Perhaps he wanted to turn it into like, his great attack on Stalinism.
Oh, I'm sure.
I decided, well, yeah, but if Chris still wants to have that argument, then, well, happy to do it maybe at some point in the future. But you might not want to discuss it with me after today's post-mortem, Chris. However, I thought it was much more useful to make the case specifically against like a couple of points that he thought was his strong point. First of all, the understanding of national liberation struggles, where his understanding of that is completely wrong. And I think, at least I hope, that I outlined the case why Marxist-Leninists in the imperial core nations have a duty to support resistance to imperialism. And I hope that by presenting imperialism as in a, to use Plekhanov's old term, a monistic way, a way that it's not foreign policy, and nor is it domestic policy. It is being the highest stage of capitalism. Is it a unified whole? So the parasitism and degeneration and decay in the imperial core is linked directly to slaughter in the periphery, and those two things sit together. Which is exactly why I wanted to make the case that Stalin was right in Foundations of Leninism when he said that the working class in the United States and Britain and other imperial core nations has a direct interest, a real material interest. It's not ethics. It's not, well, there are ethics and morals involved, but there's a material base here for an alliance with the oppressed peoples. And it is not down to us to dictate to them what groups they choose to conduct that struggle through. And there's very real reasons why the Marxist groups went on the slide in West Asia in the 90s. So it is not down to us to say to them how they should and shouldn't engage in the struggle with the Zionist regime and American and British imperialism. And so
especially from inside America or UK. Don't you find that, especially if you're inside America or the UK, that's particularly cheeky?
Well, if you're sat in American academia, which Cutrone is, and by the way, he's horrified by the usage of the term martyr. I found that.
Oh my God, martyr! Oh, that's right. Oh man, I was going to do a collage of my favorite Hamas pictures, and I forgot because if he was watching, hi Doug, hi Chris. I was going to try to trigger him with Hamas pictures, but I forgot.
Well, just on the point about the martyrdom thing, but not only is martyrdom a conception that is shared by a number of religions. It's not just Islam, but in its Sunni and its Shia varieties. There's martyrs of communism. The Soviet Union. I know Chris would hate this as well, but in the Soviet Union, there were people were elevated to secular martyr status and were spoken of in such a way, such as the Baku commissars who were killed en masse by forces backed by British imperialism in the Revolutionary War, I think in 1918, where there was loads of them executed all at one time for refusing to bow to the foreign invasion forces. I could name several more, but communism is filled with secular martyrs for the cause. Because what is the conception of martyrdom? What does it come down to? Yes, sometimes it's a religious impulse that motivates people to give literally the final thing that you have, literally your very existence, in the pursuit of the cause you hold true to. So it's not just a religious concept. And to have a freak out, which he obviously this was very triggering for him because he brought it up, then made a face as if we were about to agree with him, and both of us just went, and what, you know?
Who gives a shit?
Yeah, I mean, it was like,
well, if I could, sorry,
yeah.
go ahead. No, go
well,
ahead.
It was like suddenly Richard Dawkins was in the room with us, you know, or the ghost of Christopher Hitchens. And I have a feeling that Chris likes to think of himself as the next Christopher Hitchens, you know?
Well, he needs to work on that witticism and the writing. But anyway, yeah. No, what I thought was so, I mean, on that note, yeah, I mean, the contradictions are fantastic. So first of all, let's get through the Hamas stuff. Because again, I brought him on. We were nice to him. I provided him a summary of our points and also shared them with everybody else so that everybody would be on the same page. And he decided not to deal with that, even though he had tried to make like we were just making up stuff. But apparently I take that to mean that we were spot on with him, because he could have elaborated on, he didn't. So I take that to be like we were, which it's not hard to crack the nuts of what of his material that we have covered in the past. It's quite clear. He may not like how it's received, but that's a different issue. But with the Hamas thing, it's like, first of all, I can maybe forgive, not him, but like my parents or something, or maybe even not them, because I spent 2 years in Gaza and they're fairly well informed. But people who just get their basic information from mainstream media, and if they were to go on somehow end up with Doug Lane on, 10 days after or 2 weeks after October 7th and say the crazy shit he did, I could be like, well, that's just in the ether and propaganda and all this stuff. And then later on, but the fact that he teaches critical theory and he's a critical thinker, and he just parrots this stuff. And then when you challenge him on it, he won't admit any wrongdoing or any mistake. He's like, well, that was just the information at the time. Well, that's a nice dodge. So you outsource your thinking on that? Consensus thinking? Well, CNN, and that's what CNN and the Washington Post were saying. So like, what? But then again with the article that someone shared to me that I think was like a year ago of that Trotskyist organization kind of disavowing them and basically saying, we're not associated with this genocide denial, and that's exactly what it is. You could excuse it maybe initially, but him, Lane, Studebaker, all those guys that turn up their noses at people who, will say martyr or who are for their students protesting in the street, they're genocide deniers and apologists. They're nasty pieces of work. Now, they can be nice. Everybody can be nice. And I was thinking about this because I caught a bit of, as an aside, Tucker Carlson was talking to somebody and he was bringing up Lindsey Graham. And he was saying, look, like I've had a great time with Lindsey. He's funny, always has a drink in his hand, telling jokes and stuff, but he's like off his rocker. He gets off on getting people killed. He's he basically evil, but he's nice to hang around. It's like, yeah, so, but to me, that's the thing is these guys, these genocide denying apologists who want to then catch pearls about, students using the word martyr or Hamas. And then he challenges people about moralizing, like they're against imperialism because of moralizing reasons. And what does he do? Well, they're saying martyr, or they killed innocent civilians on October 7th. I'm like, okay, first of all, that's an ideological category. I don't think there's any innocent adult civilian in Israel. Sorry, not one. Doesn't mean I think they all should be destroyed. No. But if you look at that project, compulsory military service at 18 for men and women. Yeah. Then you go into the reserves. Then you have the government and all the stuff that goes into managing the checkpoints and the occupation and the apartheid and all that stuff. Hello, what the deal is. So I don't know why you would think that going in and participating in that Jew Seder imperialist outpost colony should be a risk-free exercise, or raving next door to the Gaza concentration camp, just the same as like I wanted to have a rave in Kashmir, and then they're like, oh my God, innocent people were killed. It's like, please, pro-clutching about that, but says nothing. They never clarify when it comes out when that stuff gets debunked, how many Israelis were actually killed by the IDF that day. None of it.
Quite a lot.
The cheek of that guy, I'm going to stop now and look at your point. Telling us that he's anti-Zionist. Does he think we're stupid? Or is he just off his rocker? How do you clarify positions with then saying he's anti-Zionist?
Well, because he's anti-Zionist in that precise moment, because he would have been on the very much a losing end if he'd have tried to argue for his actual position, which he'd expressed before, which was that there should be working class unity between Palestinians and residents of Israel. That's his actual position, which is actually the position of most mainline Trotskyite outfits when you get below the surface. Chris Cutrone just puts it more out there. Well, he did previously. He didn't on that stage. The fact that if you've reached the age of, what is he, 50, 54, something like that?
54, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So you've reached that age and you don't realize that the Israeli government's standard practice is to do something and then accuse everybody else of it. You know, it's everything they said about October the 7th was things that they literally do as standard practice and has been exposed as such, even in the Israeli press, even in it's mostly Haaretz, but even like the Jerusalem Post has admitted to things like they accuse like Arab men of being like mass rapists. There's a in Israel now, there's being exposed like an enormous beyond Epstein level like pedophile ring. There's hearings even in the Knesset about it, like with apparently people up to like senior government level being implicated, like Prince Andrew type stuff. Haaretz admitted that like Israel is a bolt hole for the worst kind of like sex offenders from the Western world, because they can go there and there's no extradition treaty. Let's move on to talk about October the 7th itself, the accusation of mass targeting of civilians. Hamas is, well, I shouldn't say just Hamas, because there's at least 4 or 5 other groups involved.
Oh, yeah, we know, yeah.
But the raid itself was specifically designed to take prisoners of war, mostly Israeli military prisoners, and exchange them for those held in Israeli jails, often those who are held without trial and under conditions that would qualify.
Including children, including women, including people who were on death's door. Yeah. Yeah,
and there's over 300 children under the age of 12, I think. You know, the most deadly terrorists of all, clearly. So they can
throw a rock like nobody's business.
Yes, and so best lock them all up. So, and also the accusation of mass killing of civilians, it's been proved over and over again. In actual fact, the Hamas raid was very targeted and very precise. There were no mass rapes. In fact, like I do not think there is a single case that has been actually proved beyond a mere assertion of Hamas and other resistance fighters actually raping or sexually assaulting anybody that day. I think that the Grey Zone covered it, covered the New York Times story that claimed this, and it was all traced back to a couple of like Israeli so-called humanitarian organizations run by people, at least one of whom had been credibly accused of being a rapist. So again, basic psychoanalytical stuff. It's all accusations that cover up their own crime. The mass killing of civilians on that day was done by Israeli helicopter gunships. You know, the Hamas does not have access to Apache attack helicopters, and they didn't. And who blew up all those cars that were in that massive?
Melted them. Well, yeah.
So
it's all bullshit, and it's the idea that he pretends like this is not, and he's also both him and Studebaker. Will balk at, they think it's not helpful to talk about it in terms of genocide and ethnic cleansing. It's like we shouldn't call things what they are. It's genocide denial. He wants to call it a war. It's not a war. One side has some old guns and handmade explosives and gumption, and they're willing to martyr themselves for the cause. And the other side has the entire weight of the U.S. Anglo-American empire. Every single possible weapon you can imagine, an army, a navy, an air force, this and that and the other. And this piece of crap wants to say it's a war because that's, again, it's all manufacturing consent. And these guys will pretend that Israel doesn't say and do what Israelis say and do. You can go back to the beginning of this project, and it's quite clear what the end game is. How much they can get away with changes. and how much their population can handle being seen in a certain way changes. But it's quite clear what this project has been about. And for him to lie, he's either lying to himself or he thinks that we're idiots. Or anybody else takes him seriously on this issue, he thinks you're an idiot. Why he lies or is high in his own supply, who knows? I don't care about that. But on this issue, that's why I got mad at him at the on the X a couple days ago, because he still he can't accept the fact that I don't give a crap what he says about this. A stopped clock can be right twice a day. I'm like, listen, dick about shit about this issue. Done. Well, now, for me, other people can listen to him, but I can't imagine the value of listening to what he has to say, giving him any credibility on this issue. And you combine that with his convenient hedging on the gender mania. Please, clowns. Sorry, go ahead, Alexander. I'm turned up.
The point is that he and I would say that for a man who denounces like the Western left, he's actually very much a product of it. Because in actual fact, for the Western left to exist, for the project which they're all engaged in to exist, and this is where I think they've got a lot in common with like the DSA, the Jacobin crew, and numerous, shall we say, high-profile podcasters in the United States. For their project to work, it is based on a total denial of the crimes of US and more widely Western European imperialism. You have to deny all of that, and you have to deny any solidarity with those who are targeted by imperialism if your project is to succeed. Because again, like Chris denied in our discussion that he was like looking to revive welfare capitalism or this, that, or the other. But the thing is, that's always where like US or British left, whether it's the DSA or your party or the Greens, it's where they all end up, which is looking for a revival of welfare capitalism. I don't think that like Chris's project would end any differently for all his proclamations of militancy, because central to his analysis is a denial of the crimes of imperialism. On an intellectual level, he will say to himself, I'm opposed to Zionism. On a real world level, his actual politics are pro-Zionist, because like you said, he agrees, he just takes all the propaganda from the New York Times and CNN and runs with it. Why? It's not because he's stupid, it's because it chimes with his belief system. And I'll just go a little bit further into this. When we had in a part of a discussion about industrialization, Chris made two very revealing comments that I want to look at now. First, he said that the price of Soviet and Chinese industrialization was not worth it. Now, I pointed out that without that industrialization, World War II would have had a very different outcome. And he just sort of shrugged, which to me, that says an awful lot about like the smugness and the foolishness of like the Western left. What kind of like sacrifices was it necessary, or human sacrifices, quite literally, was it necessary to make for capitalism in Britain and the United States to emerge? Marx makes the comment that it emerges covered in head to toe in blood. So like by the extension of Chris's logic, was that worth it? If we're going to use the same standards here to look at this. But also, he made another revealing comment. And I don't think he expected me to defend the 5-year plan period, but I did, and he had no answer to it. He made another revealing comment where he said that a lot of people were attracted to communist parties in the mid-20th century because they were just national developmentalists, which I think was also very revealing, which is, okay, well, you can argue that like national developmentalism is like not Marxist or something, but can you really blame people in like, I don't know, Vietnam or China or Laos for being national developmentalists when the countries were literally like semi-feudal colonized places where the population was illiterate and the life expectancy for most men was less than 40. So, but yes, people were attracted to communism and still are, because in certain countries it promises a path to industrial and therefore civilizational development. And I would say that in actual fact, the cost of Chinese and Soviet industrial development was far less damaging for the world than British industrial development or American industrial development or French industrial development. Because unlike all of those countries, yes, there was, a price to be paid, but it was not taken out and extracted from colonies. Like a lot of British industrial development was powered not just by the hyper-exploitation and immiseration of the population here, but also ripping off and deindustrializing and asset stripping the Indians. Soviets and the Chinese never did that. So to sit at the heart of imperialism and sneer at people for being attracted to communism because they're just national developmentalists is the height of like up your own arse, like complete like myopic Western leftism. Oh, nothing's worth that sacrifice. So rather conveniently then, Chris, you would have most of the rest of the world lie in an undeveloped state. So conveniently, it can continue to be fucked over and ripped off by US imperialism. And this all flows directly from the position of Cutrone, Lane, and the rest of the Western leftists, which is that, they act their position as advocates for the revival of social democracy, which I know he denied that, but that's where his politics lead to. That depends upon the rest of the world being left in submission to imperialism and the proceeds coming home so that concessions can be paid for. So I thought those were two incredibly revealing comments about where his politics actually lie. It's the same politics as Michael Harrington, it's the same politics as Max Shachtman and all the other pantheon of American leftists, but it's just with a twist of Adorno thrown in and some mental Trotskyite grouping that he was in as a younger man.
Well, what I thought is, hearing you say it like that, because I was trying to think about, because to take him seriously on the fact that he wants to attain what he calls proletarian, his idea of proletarian socialism, and trying to square that with all this other nastiness, and I'm just like, what's this about? And I'm thinking, is it some sort of and what came to my mind is that book. You remember that book, like Empire and Multitude and Commonwealth? The idea that, and I wonder if that, and maybe that also goes back to why he maybe thought it wouldn't have been such a bad thing if the Soviet Union didn't beat communist Germany, Nazi Germany, because then we get to this one world order faster maybe, and then it's just a matter of just clicking on that proletarian consciousness and kind of formally realizing that we already have this socialist system, or we just have to kind of change our consciousness because it's the idea there's already the multitude, there's the empire. I was thinking like maybe that's why he's such a fan of US imperialism. Like, well, why not, Greenland? Why not this? And I made a joke today online, like, why not Jelani? Because the quicker we get to this more stitched up, clearly one world hegemon system, well, then it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to global socialism or national socialism or something, without that and that pesky nationalism and all that other stuff he doesn't like when it's other people. It's just kind of, it's already been done and dusted. I don't know if that makes any kind of sense, but
it does make sense on the grounds that, like, again, this is a Trotskyite thing. This is like the Trotsky's absolute refusal to reckon with the need for changes in tactics in the 1920s that were necessitated by the failure of the revolution in the West, and the need to now focus on building socialism in one country, which Trotskyites always routinely misrepresent. Because the thing that the Trotskyites have, and this is the reason why they're nowhere outside of the West, they're politically nowhere, is that without the great and holy West, nothing is possible. That was the Trotskyite position. And all these other awkward things which get in the way, such as national liberation struggles, such as
people not wanting to be apartheided,
people not wanting to live in apartheid states, people like resisting things. This all goes back to a completely wrong reading, an incorrect reading of like the position of Marx and Engels on imperialism, which is that in their earlier writings, there was like the hope expressed by Marx that like the British factory system would be exported to India and therefore would overcome like in the Asiatic mode of production and would overcome Indian backwardness. When they actually made an analysis of what the British were doing in India, they changed their analysis and actually they voiced support for the first Indian War of Independence in 1857, known in Britain, of course, as the Indian Mutiny, because how dare they rise up against us? And they then analyzed imperialism, started to analyze imperialism in a different way. The Trotskyists are still stuck in the pre-1857 Marx position, which was again taken up by the pro-imperialists in the Second International, which is, well, if we need to get capitalism into these countries and we need to conquer backwardness, and this is done by, if only imperialism would succeed and make these countries capitalist more quickly, then we'd have a proletarian revolution, which is actually what some Trotskyites express about Israel. What they miss is that capitalism stopped playing its progressive role around in the West around about like 1870, 1880. So it's just been decay and rot ever since then. And to believe that, as Cutrone I think does on some level, that a sort of rotten garrison state, which is what Israel is in any way advancing the cause of like working class power, is completely ridiculous. And if anything, it's a bigger version of the sort of experiments in settler colonialism that were found in like Algeria, Rhodesia, places like that, or white South Africa, and it's got all the perverse elements to it that Frantz Fanon talked about when it comes to like white settler colonialism. So to believe that could be an example of like working class solidarity in action, if the Palestinians would just get over it and embrace their oppressor. Because if
the slaves had just gone over to the white laborers and said, "Hey,
let's join hands together."
You didn't have to have the violence. You didn't have to have the Civil War. I mean, he's great at throwing out these unfalsifiable, hypothetical counterfactuals.
Yeah,
he did it with like, well, they could have just gone to the kibbutz and made, and organized with their Israeli brothers on a class basis. Like, okay, yeah, and monkeys can fly up my ass, and it's like, well, yeah, and you could be like, well, you didn't really have to have the Civil War, you didn't really have to have this, and Mandela didn't have to be in prison for 30 years, and and you didn't have to have the Great Leap Forward. Well, okay, yeah, it's like him and Studebaker and all these guys, they're kind of like the groundhogs or something. They come out every once in a while, they put their finger out, they look, and if anything's distasteful, they come back and be like, oh no, let's check it in 10 more years or 15 more years. We'll go back to our reading room. We'll go back to our, our calling, our umpire. We're somehow pitched above everybody else and just calling balls and strikes or Stalinist, bad Stalinist, whatever it is. And I think the word I was trying to think of when I brought up Hart and Negri was accelerationism. And I was thinking about with Cutrone, not in the technological part, which is usually how you think about accelerationists, but just in this accelerationist of like, if we can just, stop, just let this imperialism happen. Just let it, cover we have to get, let's let it just, kick off. Let's get to the next part. Stop with this, fighting back and the resistance and this and that. Let's just get it over with. I think that's maybe what I was thinking about, which, is convenient because he's not the one that has to pay any of these prices. And I also wanted to say that I thought it was kind of funny. This is circling back when he accused you of being like a poser and a propagandist in a bad way and all this stuff, with your communist educational thing. And it's clear he didn't do any homework. And I want to be like, well, what the F do you do, dude? You teach critical theory classes at a private art school, and then you have your platypus thing, which the CIA would love. I'm not saying it's funded by that, but if it was if they would be like, what would we love for a left, a critique of the left by the left, and an organization that's looking about, constantly talking about how we have to reground the left. What would that be like? It would totally be like that organization. But I'm not, that's just objectively speaking. But it's like he has the platypus stuff, which is like, just trying to make sure that people that get any kind of students get any kind of interest in Marxism don't learn the wrong kind of Marxism. I want to clear that up. And then what does he do? Do you really think, like, I would be willing to bet all that I have, which unfortunately is not as much as it used to be, that if we wanted to put, like, he was like, well, that's platypus. And so his socialist unity thing, I bet you that consists of his articles and his podcast talking about it. I bet that's all there is there. But yet he's going to point fingers and look down at you. And you actually are a member of a political party, a Marxist-Leninist party, So, of course, your YouTube programs are separate from that. But your educational endeavors and propaganda can be a good and bad. You got to spin it. But I was like, dude, and he's an adjunct. You're right there. You could organize the adjuncts in Chicago and form a coalition with the non-academic, non-administrative staff and the higher ed. You think he's done that? Doubt it.
I doubt it. Yeah. Also,
I don't F with people who will be like, oh, trans women are women, maybe, oh, gender, blah, 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 and and peddle and sound like they, just opened up their junk Hasbro drawer and started, saying this stuff. Well, when we knew a genocide was brewing.
Yeah.
But however, sorry. Anything about any of that? Something else?
On the accelerationism thing, this was, it's again, like, is a completely non-dialectical view, because anybody who actually analyzes things knows that there is objective factors and then there's subjective factors. So the objective factors can be getting worse, as they are in imperial core nations, such as, and I believe we covered this quite comprehensively, but this is part of the decay of imperialism. However, the subjective factors, the main subjective factor being the leadership of the working class, like the need for what I would term as the vanguard party, which I'm sure, due to Chris's rather surprised look when I said I defended democratic centralism, that either doesn't exist or it exists on a tiny, almost insignificant level, unfortunately. So you can have the objective factors such as like economic decline, societal disintegration, institutions becoming delegitimized in the eyes of the population. All of that can be going in a certain direction, and the acceleration is to like, yes, the time has come. But then they suddenly realize that, oh, well, the subjective factor isn't there, because like you can't just be like, life can get worse for the bulk of the population, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to an outcome that you would enjoy. It's not going to be the case that, like, again, this is like basic stuff. A plus B doesn't always equal C, to use this to called algebra. It's like there's a lot of intervening factors at each stage. So if the subjective factor is missing, what you end up with is disintegration. What you end up with is not, the move to a higher phase. You don't, for the French Revolution to happen, a whole series of, like, should we say, class-based and struggles and intellectual efforts had to be made to get to the point where a 1789 goes down in the way that it does. Or if you're American and you want to make it about 1776, same thing. So a whole series of things have to happen to make that event go in the way that it does. Just to sit down and imagine that, oh, well, if capitalism conquers the world, then, without talking about the I word, imperialism, then somehow a great proletariat will emerge and it will automatically just overthrow the capitalists. This is all nonsense. This is all like, this isn't dialectical materialism in action. This is like, this is like idealism. Just believing that if things get worse, then somehow at the end of all that, then things will get better, which is why so many accelerationists freak out when they see the actual results of the acceleration and go nuts, because they can't. yes. And various others who in 2016 were saying, well, if Trump comes to power, it'll accelerate things. And then suddenly, yes, it does accelerate things, but nothing, again, like so many of these guys see, like, they want their Marxism in a sterile atmosphere. They want their Marxism to be unpolluted by like national struggles or like struggles against, like, to liberate a land from colonialism. And if they want their Marxism in this sterile laboratory atmosphere, because we're talking about scientific socialism here, but the science doesn't always happen in a lab, guys. It's not like in the view of like the Lanes, the Cutrones, the Studebakers, and many others. It's like, if my Marxism can't be happening in this perfect atmosphere, where all of the what they regard as extraneous distractions is just not important anymore and doesn't have to be dealt with. If it's not that, then I don't want it, and I'm going to retreat into intellectual noodling for the next 20 years. And that really came across because and again, this is a Trotskyite thing. On the one hand, Cutrone was saying to us, well, we need a return to the pre-political, we need to go back to basics, etc., etc. On the other hand, so on one level, he does sort of recognize the fact that the US left is in the fucking toilet. On the other hand, he denounces all previous attempts to recalibrate our tactics. So I'll just mention this. He denounces United and Popular Front tactics in the 1930s that were tried by the Comintern against fascism. He said that was the cause of the rot. But again, that's a response, no matter what you think of it, that's a response to a specific problem, which is the inroads that fascism was making, certainly in the dispossessed petty bourgeoisie and the peasantry, and even a certain layer of the working class. So you need, when communist parties are too small, and yet there is a nominally anti-fascist coalition available, to prevent the decline, the fall into straight up fascism, you need to make certain tactical reconsiderations. And in some cases that worked, in some cases that didn't. But the problem with the Trotskyite position is they just keep screaming, no, the proletariat must retain completely operational independence. Well, you can keep screaming that in your classroom of 10 people. You can keep screaming that selling your paper on the street corner. But again, that is again a Marxism which is divorced from the messiness of the actual political struggle. So on the one hand, Chris is saying, oh, we need a return to the pre-political, and it can't be Marxist, it needs to be this, that, and the other. So on the one hand, he recognizes the need for a change in tactics, but he's completely unable to recognize how in previous historical periods that the tactical reconsiderations and an analysis of what had failed and what had succeeded is necessary. So again, this is the essence of Trotskyism. On the one hand, a hysterical idealism, and when that doesn't work, a collapse into complete opportunism. And there's no, unlike what I'm trying to do with my own educational efforts. And by the way, I am a propagandist, Chris. It's just that I don't see that as an insult.
That's what public relations used to be called, right?
Yes.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they don't want to have to actually do scientific socialism in the way that Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, Mao, and others did it, which is you have to take the working class where it is, and you have to develop from there and work out a way to get it to where it should be. And so, but what the Trotskyites do is scream idealistic nonsense and then collapse into opportunism when the idealistic nonsense doesn't work. So it's to them, it's never dialectical. It's always one bizarre extreme or another, and there's never any attempt to actually develop things.
Well, and I'm surprised because again, that there's not a lot of economy in his Marxism. There's not a lot of economic there, it seems. And I remember him also saying well, you don't have to have the whole world doesn't have to industrialize. It's well, again, he contradicts himself whenever he's backed into a corner, because he can only succeed, I think, when he's doing at a very high level of abstraction with people who buy his bullshit. Yeah, who think that he's something that walks on water. Then it works. Yeah. But when you try to connect that with an actual case, then he has a problem. And it's well, so explain to me. It's like, are you saying that uneven geographical development isn't a thing? Isn't part of how capitalism works or needs to work, and that isn't obviously contribute to power relations, geopolitical relations, both within and outside nation states and regions? I mean, I was just really confused by that.
Well, yes.
that's what we're saying, that everybody has to industrialize the exact, like make the exact same things. Like there can't be any kind of, specialization or trade or whatever. It's like, what are you talking about? I mean, it was really bizarre to me, but
well,
anyway.
I mean, what he's talking about, I think, is the fact that on a fundamental level, he believes that the non-industrial countries should remain non-industrial. By the way, the position he shares with the Green Party, not the only thing he shares with the Green Party.
I think him and Zach, what's his name, Polanski, would have a good time.
Yeah,
I think they'd have a lot.
I think they'd love it. I think they'd find so much to agree on. Including like the impoverishment of the neo-colonial world being the necessary for the preservation of the Eloi in the white marble castles of the West,
and maybe even share opinions on the age of consent. I don't know, allegedly.
Well,
which makes me really want to bring that up, though. Let's bring that up because why not? It's no holds barred now, people. Because I don't know if this. Do I even have this or not? Do I have it? Yeah. So I don't know if this is true or not. But there's this quote that's apparently is from Chris Cutrone in 2009. And it's some sort of, it must be for Platypus. They comment back and forth. And it says, I think the Spartacus position in defense of NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association, and calling for abolishing age of consent laws is very good and is in fact one of their better positions. The reason this is a Marxist position is that it recognizes the historical transformability of sexual morality and looks forward to looks forwards to emancipation. Most of the fake left are utter reactionaries by comparison. Yes, if you don't think that grown men should have open access to adolescence, you're a reactionary. He does not have kids, I hope. Anyway, sorry, allegedly. If you'd like to read Adorno's argument along similar lines, please see this essay on sexual taboos in law today, which was discussed recently in the Platypus reading group. So, of course, it's not. So apparently, it's not just "quote unquote" queer theory, Foucault and Judith Butler that want to look at age of consent laws. And of course, I get why they would look at that, because adolescence is a kind of a historical period, because that with and I think that's a good thing, that as the mode of production changed, that you're allowed to have an actual adolescence and whatnot. But I don't know if this is true or not. You can fake comments, though it wouldn't surprise me. Just a vibe I get, and it has nothing to do with his sexual orientation. Although now I really want to know, Alexander, how old his husband was when they met.
Well,
and the only reason why I'm bringing up his husband is because he did. His husband is like, he reminds me of this crazy feminist who thinks that Islam is out to conquer the world and burqa everyone and all this crazy stuff. She has a husband from Lebanon. Her husband grew up in Lebanon, so she's an expert, even though she's bright white and from Australia. So he told us when he was pushing back against, when he was feeling uncomfortable about being cast as at least structurally Zionist, objectively Zionist or imperialist, in that way. He's like, look, my husband is Muslim, basically like my black friend or something. And then he said that, my husband told me that the reason why October 7th happened was because of how Israelis treat Alaska Mosque, like they don't, how they desecrate it. And he kind of paused and gave a look like we were supposed to be shocked by this. It's like, there's 2 billion Muslims. Who gives a fuck what your husband says? It's like, it's irrelevant. It's like me saying, oh, my husband's Dutch, so I'm an expert. The only like anybody who's not Dutch and isn't married to a Dutch person, by definition, my take on anything Netherlands is superior to yours. So he brought up his husband. And then I read this and I thought, I wonder how old his husband is, because they obviously don't have an intellectual connection. Sorry. Anyway, side note.
Well, the point is that the Spartacist position that comment mentions, that is true. The Sparts do
Okay.
defend.
I don't know enough about that. Can you say a bit about the Spartacists?
Yeah.
I know he said he's a Spartacist, but I don't know exactly. I know who Sparta was.
Yeah. Well, the Spartacists have, things in common with Sparta that one might want to comment on after hours. But the Spartacist group are an American Trotskyite organization that he said he was a member of back in the day. I'm not sure whether that was on camera or off camera. He said that.
No, he said that. First, he gave something about when he was a kid and he saw a Star Trek episode, and kind of like, and that's when I realized, that's when I wanted nice things for nice people, and I don't know, but yeah, he mentioned that on camera.
The point about the Spartacists is that he said he was a member of theirs. The Spartacists are notorious, even in Trotskyite circles, for being the most crazy when it comes to the question, the sexuality question, age of consent, and stuff like that. They have defended NAMBLA stuff in the past in public, so they are on record as being into that. They're also, of course, all into the trans stuff, all into the genderqueer stuff. So that's the background of the Spartacists. So that part is real. If he was a member of theirs, then presumably on one level he would have had to have bought into that at some point in his life. The fact that, that comment from 2009 is, I would suspect, if it's not true, I'm sure Chris can issue a full and frank denial, but it is part of the intellectual legacy of the Western left. Think of who were the big name, the big ticket names from 1968. Daniel Cohn-Bendit, of course, defended the position of having no age of consent. He defended in writing having adults having raping children. Let's just be honest about it. Cohn-Bendit defended that in what he said later was an intellectual exercise. Many of the founders of the German Greens, despite those that some of them had Nazi links, but also that they were linked directly to the 68 radicals, also had the same position. So again, this sort of Marquis de Sade type stuff,
libertine,
libertine shit.
If it feels good, it is good. Any norm that constrains my sexual exploration and excitement is by definition, I guess, reactionary.
Yeah, well, but that's the essence of the sort of petty bourgeois radicals from the late 1960s. And also, if the comment quoted there gives Cutrone as saying, "Oh, Adorno defends this," I'm sure Adorno did. I haven't read that particular bit because these guys, they're either into it or everything's an intellectual exercise. And I think if you challenged Cutrone or anybody else on that, by the way, Cutrone's position, if indeed that quote is real, is the same as the Peter Tatchell position, the notorious Peter Tatchell, who's neocon extraordinaire and also a man who went into print defending the idea that there should be no age of consent, and later then tried to clarify it and made his comments strangely more creepy. You can find that on Peter Tatchell's own website.
Well, and you mentioned the gender stuff, and I think this makes the position that Sublation and Cutrone and others took, which is either you had the range from trans women or women, no debate, and if you don't agree with that, you're a bigot and a sexual apartheidist and a gender essentialist, and you're just a prude and all this stuff. Or they try to kind of be agnostic about it, it's not really weigh in on it, or to be kind of well, what's the big deal? What does it matter? Why do you care? What's the big deal if there's some guys in women's sports? Or Ben Burgess and Bergeron would be well, they just want to pee. What's the big deal? There's just guys who want to pee. Well, first of all, if they just want to pee, they can pee in the boys' room. And if they have an issue with the guys, they should take it up with their brothers. I don't need some 6'4" guy named Mary and his gender girl kit sharing a bathroom with my 10-year-old girls. Fuck off very much. And if I have to explain that to you, you're either trying to be stupid on purpose or you're just an idiot. So there's no good reason for that. But this brings me into, and this might not be tea at all about Doug Lane. I don't know what he shares on Sublation. Maybe he's come out as a they, he. I don't know. But I just want to share this because this is one of the reasons why I don't F with these people, these guys. But when he offered to come on the program, I thought, well, this would be good because it's not just about me. Other people can make up their own mind. And I was also curious to see what he would say. So this is a few years ago when I first realized how crazy the gender stuff had gotten. And I was having a back and forth. I think it might have been with Ben Burgess or Bergeron. I can't remember. But anyway, and they were just being I couldn't figure out if they're just being dense or if they're just trying to be trolls on purpose. Like, well, what's the big deal if there's, like, why can't prisons be co-ed? I'm like, because I was like, it's all fun and games. I don't care what, but like, I don't want to yuck your yum. If you want, call yourself whatever, dress how you want. But when it comes down, but it starts there and ends up with men and women's prisons, 30-year-olds competing against 12-year-old girls for skating competitions and all this crazy stuff. The boxer hitting someone in the face in the Olympics, and we're all watching it. And they're trying to make light of it, right? And at some point, Doug Lane jumps in, and we're going back and forth. And I can't, and again, I'm trying to figure out, are they just trying to like yank my chain, or are they just kind of really just this, like, I'm thinking, okay, you say you're some sort of Marxist, some sort of materialist, critical thinkers, but yet when I try to point blank you, what's the difference between gender and sex, how many sexes are, like at what point, explain to me at what point does adding or subtracting something, or what word turns a man into a woman or vice versa? Because I'm really curious about how this works, because to me, it's the most crazy fundamentalist subjective idealism you could possibly have. I'm a woman if I say so. I'm a girl if I say so. I'm neither if I say so. And we all just have to go along with it, or we're some sort of prudes or right-wing reactionaries or something. Anyway, I couldn't figure it out. But so we're going back and forth, and I had never had an exchange with Doug Lane on Twitter before. He DMs me and he tells me that he's a cross-dresser.
Oh God. Oh God!
He basically says like, I'm like, well, I like to cross dress, or I like to, like, he just like tells me this. And like, I have never had an interaction with him before. He just like, so it's not like I'm breaking a confidence. We weren't peers, we weren't friends, or whatever. And I was like, and I'm thinking back at the time, I'm like, either he's trying to test me, like to see if I'm just some sort of prude, like I just whatever. But now looking back, it makes a lot of sense. Like, of course, because if you like to cross dress, part of the fun is going into the ladies' spaces. So I'm just saying, unless he just totally made that up, it makes sense why he would be so kind of agnostic on the gender thing. Because maybe he likes maybe that's why they had that guy come on and talk about the pink brain, blue brain thing. They literally had that episode. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, no wonder. So I'm just saying, I don't know what goes. I'm just saying, I don't know what goes on at the sublation parties or whatnot. I don't know. Studebaker seems straight-laced. If I had to pay Studebaker, I'd say he's probably still a virgin, and that's fine. I mean, maybe he's not. That's my guess. But it's like these guys, and it's so funny to me when they turn up their nose, especially at the ACP and Midwestern Marx and all of that. And I just want to say to anybody off the record, if you're in the States and the shit's going down, would you rather be at a sublation platypus event, or would you rather be at an ACP infrared Midwestern Marx event? I know for sure which one I'd want to be at.
Well, I mean,
snaggle of sublation, gamma guys. I'm just, again, it's maybe I'm really missing out, putting on, we all have our lines, and I just don't care.
Well, look,
enough to worry about being mean to Chris Cutrone on our debate debrief.
Well, I'll say this: like, if Doug's into that, then as long as he does it in his own home and doesn't hurt anybody, then that's fine. Whatever you want to do, mate.
Of course.
As for approaching people randomly on Twitter to tell them that's a bit weird. That tends to could be done by like weirdo exhibitionists, and you should probably seek psychological help.
Well, that was my thing. It's like, are you just getting off on telling me this, or what? Because it was just really weird. And I kept it somewhere. I have it saved somewhere. Because I thought to myself, I didn't know why, I thought I should save this. And and subsequently, my Tara Van Dyke account has been suspended because I was turned in for authenticity reasons, like I'm pretending to be Tara Van Dyke, or I'm some sort of sex bot crypto shiller. I don't know if it was a TRA who turned me in, or a Zionist crazy person. Maybe it was Chris Cutrone. I know, I'm kidding. But I'm glad that, because that's embargoed, but I did clip that because I thought, this is so weird. Why would you just tell me this?
Yeah,
and he could have been making it up.
That is bizarre.
Yeah.
Well, he could have been, but then I guess it's a rather strange thing to make up, to be completely honest.
Yeah.
And also, like,
So anyway, be thankful, viewers. Be thankful that when you're watching Sublation, that you only see Doug from the chest up, and not the pumps that make him feel comfortable in a special kind of way. You know what I mean? Again, no judgment. I don't want to yuck your yum. I totally agree. What what happens between consenting adults in private is, have fun. But stay out of the girls' room, Doug. Stay out of the girls' room.
Yeah, just keep it in your own bedroom, Doug, or on your own podcast. But just the point about I wanted to make about like the platypussies and like the comparison with the ACP, like the reason why I continue to defend the ACP as a positive step is precisely because no matter what else it does, it has broken away from that rotten American left tradition that Cutrone, Lane, and Studebaker and Burgess and all the others, that they are dwelling within, because that is by design wholly unappealing to the great bulk of the American working class if they were to ever to find out what it means. At the very least, no matter what criticisms one can have of the ACP, them breaking with that and actually founding something which is at least unapologetically Marxist-Leninist, that's a huge step forward. And the fact is that they are attracting younger proletarians for precisely those reasons, that no one would want to go near the Platypussy Party, to be completely honest, especially not if Doug Lane is a version of the killer from Silence of the Lambs,
Well, look at this group. Look at this group. There's a couple of they-thems there, I think, I'm seeing some 5 o'clock shadows where I shouldn't be. Again, you got to recruit where you can recruit, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. But to go on to this point, because I got to go in a few minutes. But the point about someone pointed out in the comments. Actually, I want to read this out, that the Spartacist group's headquarters is right by Harvard in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So funny place for a group of hardcore revolutionaries to be based, or maybe the ideal place, because if the FBI isn't paying these people, then to be honest, the American federal government is getting a bargain, because like the whole of the pro-imperialist Marxism, the gender stuff, the denunciations of national liberation, linked, of course, organically to the sort of the pro-imperialist social democrats of the DSA, etc. All of this is doing the work for the American ruling class in very productive ways, because if you can get the bulk of the American working class, or at least enough of them, to think socialism means this lot, then that's the job half done. Because again, to go back to the point about objective and subjective conditions, the ruling class can prolong their power for far beyond the point where, like, the system they represent is, objectively speaking, progressive. It's simply by making sure that the subjective factors don't keep up with the objective factors. And you do that by promoting this thing called the Western left. You do that by promoting various different weirdos into positions of prominence and having them called communists, knowing full well that if most workers see that, they'll think, well, fuck that. I'm not getting involved with that shit. I'm going to go and vote for this guy who says he's a based Christian nationalist or something. This is the thing. And again, you're putting up on screen here, Defection of the Leftist Intellectuals. The entire project, post-50s, and again, we've talked about this before, of the Western left, is to make sure it remains completely divorced from the working class. And that's an aim shared by the petty bourgeois radicals who just want to feel special, and the intelligence services. So, the American intelligence services are getting a bargain from these leftists.
Well, and I was thinking about this, and I'm glad that we're ending up here, because I just want to talk about, I was thinking about this report today when I was preparing for our debrief, and becoming highly caffeinated, that a lot of what this was saying about the French after 68 could be said about the critical theory, or the critical theory in the United States, and up through also sublation, the DSA, platypuses, all this stuff. It's the same. It's like the same assessment could be made, but it's too bad for these guys that the Cold War ended, because whereas Pushtone and some of these guys got really sweet deals and professorships, Cutrone's still languishing and as an adjunct. So he's just doing this for the love of the game, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe for his,
the Cold War.
Yeah, but just to end on this, because this is available online, and they were talking more about Foucault and Deleuze and all these and all these people after 68. But they talk about the disenchantment, and they talk about 3 stages: the disillusionment with Stalinism and the separation, that divide. So that was used to delegitimize all forms of kind of broad-based political organization and whatnot, a distrust of those of those institutions, intellectual rehabilitation through critique. So it says ex-communists were rehabilitated into Western liberal circles through journals like Le Temps and all this stuff, but also they were critiques of dogma. They were just, again, it was focused on the negative. There was no like positive program, and a lot of infighting, of course, which we see. And again, it becomes very obscure, focused on sexuality and desire and culture, which of course I also, not that those are bad things to get into, but like a total fixation on it, and a movement away from class, and you kind of organize broad-based political movement, because grand narratives are evil. All these little narratives are fantastic. And this kind of emergence, what they're part of is this kind of non-communist left. And they cite the logic of it's depoliticized, it's extremely abstract, and easily contained. And they went over there, and this report is basically came like, you know what? Nothing to worry about here. They're not going to be a problem for the U.S. national interest or policy. And I think the same thing can be said for what happened in the 60s, I guess probably after World War II, because you had the Red Scare and all that, and then you had the critical theory came up with I guess Marcuse was probably more the granddaddy of that in California. Then they fell in love with Derrida and Foucault in the 80s. I think that was more an East Coast thing, but it's like, the through line. Platypus also does this, or is also can be matrixed in here. So is the sublation. So is Theory Underground. And I also like theory. I'm a nerd. I love all this stuff. I'm an accidental Zizekian. It's a reason why I can quote Lacan, because I had to figure out that stuff, and I hope it was worthwhile at some point.
Well, I will defend Lacan.
Why do they want, what gets me, Alexander, and then I'll give you the last word, is they want to make it like they're doing more than that. Like somehow they want to put virtue on that. It's like, if you like theory and all this stuff, fantastic. But to turn up your nose, or act like you're Christ on a cross when someone, challenges you. But I really think it's really interesting that since this started with him and me online, him basically saying that like we didn't like totally obviously didn't read his stuff or whatever, to the point where when he actually came on, apparently we had and got it right, because he totally went a different direction. He wanted to make it a referendum on you and Stalinism. You didn't take the bait, and then he was fucked. Then he was treading water the whole time. That's my interpretation. Yeah. And then they went on Doug Lane and tried to put lipstick on that pig. Damage control, glazing, rewriting history, whatever. Do it. If that, that works for them. But I'm glad we did it. I think it was useful. And we got, we got some content out of it. But yeah, the idea that he thinks that we were going to become like friends or something, and that we're like, oh, we could learn from you, Chris, oh, there's some points of commonality between me and Alexander. Remember what he said at the end? Oh, I'm glad we did this. I have a better understanding now of where you're coming from. And yeah, I think there's some commonality. It's like, bitch, you should have done your homework beforehand. We did ours. We read your crap. Anyway, which is really the greatest gift you can give somebody, even if you don't like it, is like you take the time to look over their stuff, listen to the stuff, try to present it. Yeah, you can be tongue-in-cheek and take some barbs and present it accurately. And we did that. He doesn't deserve anything more. He barely deserves that. And the last 5 minutes are yours, my friend.
Well, I'll just conclude by saying this: like the old Stalin meme is true, which is reject the sort of pusillanimous vacillations of Western leftism and embrace Bolshevism. Because what Western leftism is, and I think that Lane, Cutrone, and all of their friends prove this, it is degeneration. It is a celebration of weakness and impotence. It is a endless noodling with no real world impact. And here's a point that I want to conclude on. Like Lenin's famous observation that theory becomes an immaterial force when it grips the masses. And that should be our aim. It's not that we don't go down the route of saying like the anarchists do, oh, fuck theory, let's smash a window. No, theory becomes a material force when it is understood by enough of the masses, and it becomes a part of the guidance for their actions through, of course, the medium of the Revolutionary Party. That's how theory becomes a weapon, and that's why it is important. It is important to understand the theories. But the way in which the Western left, including Cutrone and Lane, treat this is, and especially Studebaker, which is they don't want it to be gripping the masses. This is the point. They don't really want, the average worker to understand Marxism, because then they, as the sacred bearers of the Western Marxist tradition, they would be out of a job, because the average worker in the United States understands far more about class struggle than these fucking bozos do, even if he votes for Trump, even if she votes for fucking, Kamala Harris or something, because they live the class struggle. These guys don't even really write about it. To them, it's an endless series of intellectual parlor games that can go on and on forever, and it has no real world impact. As a Marxist-Leninist and a defender of the legacy of Stalin, I continue to look for ways in which the theory of Marxism-Leninism can actually be transmitted to the masses, and it becomes a real material force. They just want theory to be an endless parlor game with them, Ben Burgess, talking about John Rawls for fucking ever. And I remember John Rawls from undergraduate. It was boring then.
Ben Burgess has also blocked me, by the way, for gender-related things. Yes. Anyway, sorry.
Well, this is the endless
badge of honor.
This is the endless circle jerk they want to engage in. And you know what? If that was all it was, then go ahead and do it in the corner. The problem is that these guys get an undeserved elevation to the point of being representatives of socialism or communism or something like that, when they're not. They're just a representative of how far and the Western leftist tradition has sunk into the mire, predominantly since the 1950s, and now it's just associated with basically libertinism and intellectual masturbation. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm glad we did the debate. We found out was just how little the self-proclaimed last Marxist understands about actual Marxism.
Well, remember at the end when he said it was his last bit, I think, and he mentioned something about how, I don't even know if Marxism is even helpful anymore, and this and that. I go, oh, are you no longer the last Marxist? And he said, well, then he kind of said something about how, well, it was always meant kind of ironically, not so seriously. I was like, another scoop.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, what you discover with these posers is that their actual knowledge of Marxism is really poor, because I mean, I don't know this, but I'm willing to bet that an awful lot of them have read a few bits of Marxism, and then they've read various with different Western academic interpretations of Marxism. They've never done the intellectual heavy lifting of going back into the tradition, reading and then reconsidering and trying to take the method and apply it to today's world. A lot of them have just read 5 things and decided, oh, that's out of date. which is, it's understandable if you're an ordinary person. But if you're putting yourself forward as the last Marxist, you should have a little bit more knowledge about what the Marxist canon actually says, rather than just saying that, oh, well, maybe it's all over. Okay, well, I'm sure Compact Magazine will pay you a few dollars to say that, particularly if it, comes on the heels of Trump declaring that now we're going to have American.
No, I think we might hear from him. Why not Jelani? I mean, that could
why
very
not?
well be.
Why not Jelani? I hear the opening a transgender bar in downtown Damascus now.
But if you have just 2 minutes, there's something I forgot to mention, because I remember, because his whole thing was like, children, Marxism isn't anti-imperialism, right? And when I was asking him to clarify that, he starts talking about how, what AOC says and what Bernie says. I go, well, I'm not talking about what their critiques of imperialism or foreign policy. I want to know what you mean by that, because you say Marxism is not anti-imperialism. And he's like, of course, and he said something like, Marx is an anti-imperialist because Marx is an anti-capitalist. Okay, yes and no. So I'm like, what was the Communist Manifesto? Workers of the world, unite. Hold on, no worries. I mean, it was just like. But
again, this is.
And he's supposed to be like the philosopher king, like, ooh. I'm like, dude, well, yeah, you're all hat, no cattle. Sorry.
But that's the non-dialectical approach again. Like, you to understand Marx's actual critique of capitalism, you get people like, Michael Hudson does this a little bit as well, which is trying to separate the good industrial capital from the bad financial capital. But the actual way that Marx looks at capitalism is like, he's very clear. He goes in Capital Volume 1, there's whole sections devoted to the development of capitalism in England, being like this blood-soaked parade of centuries of like brutish oppression of the peasantry and the early working class. And Marx analyzes all of that. And that's why he says capitalism emerges into the world like coated from head to toe in blood. And he analyzes all of that, and he's unsparing in describing the horrors that it indulges in. And then on the other hand, he says, and this is like, even with all of that, this represents a material progress in the world in terms of advancement of the means of production, but it comes with this heavy and blood-soaked price to pay for it. That's not him saying that we should just fly the flag and say advance capitalism, because that, again, that's a completely non-dialectical view. It does not actually chime with the tradition started by Marx and Engels, never mind what Lenin added to that through imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, the analysis that flows from that. So it's a completely one-sided view and very non-dialectical view of what Marx wrote about, even in the earliest stages, when Marx and Engels were still very much influenced by that sort of Jacobin, Napoleonic, or sort of Hegelian enthusiasm for the Napoleonic period, when they were still in a little bit of that young Hegelian tradition. By the end of their lives, they very much left that behind and had moved into a position where they were, in their later stages, prepared to consider the fact that capitalism could be skipped over by certain countries having a revolution. And that's Marx, in letters to like the Russian comrades he developed towards the end of his life, was considering that. And then the Russian Revolution goes into a certain degree, and the Chinese Revolution too, proves a lot of that. So again, I would question like the last Marxists' understanding of dialectics, because they collapse really quickly into just one-sided, shallow moralizing.
Well, is it the same thing? It's the same thing about nationalism. I mean, over and over again, that was a common thing, and he would be he likes to throw out people are not being dialectical, but he, in practice, if he gets off script, that's totally out. It's totally out.
Yeah,
so that's also a thing that, so goodness. Alexander McKay, thank you for coming on. I think we've sucked all the juice out of this lemon that we possibly can, but you never know. And I thought about saying emphatically, like, this is the last bad trot take we're going to do on Cutrone, but then I thought I better not, because he could actually write Why Not Jelani, and then I would have to eat my words if we mention him again. But I'm not. I'm hoping that this might be the last bad trot take on them. And also, I hope that before the end of the year you come on and you try to Stalin pill me as promised, because I'm even though they consider me, even though even though we were the Stalinists, so you and I together, and he showed us what's what, and Cutrone thought, and Doug thought, well, first us Stalinists goes, we weren't so unpalatable. And I thought it was kind of funny. I'm like, am I a Stalinist? Because, I'm Stalin curious. I have said that I don't know near enough about the actual political history. And I know enough about how I was raised to know that there's that programming is, even if I'm aware of it, it's still quite powerful. But anyway, we should do that. I think that would be fun to see if by the end of the episode, I'm willing to be like, I too will be a Stalinist and not balk from that title. So hopefully before the end of the year, we can.
Well, we should do it.
Fun. And you can give me some reading assignments, and I will do them. I will do them. And we'll see. I think that would be a fun thing to do, because I'm and that would be a good faith exchange.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Okay. So, what do you have going on this week? Do you have another Decline and Fall coming out that you want to plug before we say adieu?
We have Decline and Fall live midday Perfidious Albion time tomorrow, followed by in the evening an exploration of the Red October of 1917. So 2 things coming up tomorrow, and we will do the Stalin pill episode before year end, Tara. I commit to that now.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing how it turns out.
All right.
At the end, I'll have like some sort of reveal thing. Will it be like, which pill are you taking? Like between Neo and whoever that guy was, and I can't remember his name now in the Matrix. Okay, well, thank you very much. Morpheus, that's right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Take care. Give my best to your lovely lady friend, and we'll catch you next time. Will. Thank you.
All right. See you now.
That was fun. We made lots of friends. Okay, so I'm frozen. Ooh. Uh-oh. So I don't know. Oh, there I'm back again. Something is going weird, even though I have my computer like literally as close to the internet as it possibly can be. I know something is going a bit weird. Maybe it's StreamYard. Anyway, I'm just going to keep on talking, even though on my end, my screen is frozen. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Bad Trot Takes. The Lax Marxist Falls Flat. I'm realizing that instead of billing it as The Last Marxist Strikes Back, it should have been Cutronism, the New Cope, instead of the New Hope. But it was worthwhile, and who knows? Maybe they'll come around and stop contributing to the manufacturing of consent of the genocide that's going on in Gaza with the full support of Anglo-American empire, which of course ran from DC. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Please do like and subscribe to the channel that you're watching on. I will have another episode coming out shortly, but I need to run now and pick up the kids from school. So I'm going to have to dash quite quickly. So thank you, and I will see you next time. And the information where you can follow Morbid Symptoms will be coming up in just a second. Bye, everyone.